But I will say, be careful about your partners because this real estate game and how we get encroached with business it has its ups and downs. And you want to have somebody that really understands that this is a business and that there will be some ups, but there will be some downs. And having the ability to communicate through those things is highly important.
Welcome to the Aid to Assets podcast, the ultimate podcast for aspiring real estate investors. I'm your host, Tiffany Watson. Join me as we discuss real estate investing for 9-to-5ers. We'll talk about everything from money mindsets and property ownership and different strategies you can use to invest in real estate. I want to empower investors, especially those of us who are working full-time, who want to navigate the world of real estate, uncover the secrets to building wealth, generate passive income to achieve financial freedom. Equip yourself with resources from experts, practical tips, and step-by-step guides on how to kickstart your real estate journey. We'll also hear from 9-to-5ers who started to build their own portfolios, what they did and how they did it, so you can do it too. Tune in and transform your main job into your biggest silent investor in your real estate investment business. This is your Aid to Assets. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Aid to Assets podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Watson, where I get the opportunity to talk to 9-to-5ers who started and scaled their real estate portfolios and the people that help them do it. And so today I'm excited for another amazing guest who's going to walk us through his journey as he got started into real estate. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell the people who you are and where you're from?
First and foremost, thank you, Tiffany, for having me on your amazing platform. My name is Abiodun Rashaun Banjo. Got to represent the Nigerian roots.
Come on.
I am an educator. I am a social activist. I'm an entrepreneur. And for this context of our conversation, I'm a real estate investor. And thank you so much for having me on your platform because I definitely love to discuss about my experiences and how I can help the people.
Love it. Thank you so much for all that you do. As a fellow educator, I'm so excited. In my previous life, I tell people I got to be with the babies in the classroom. And so I always love to have educators on the show to tell people, even teachers, we are still in this real estate game and doing amazing, amazing work, both for our kids and building our own wealth. So super excited to have you. So before we jump in, one of the ways that I like to get started is we start with receipts to let people know why they need to go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Tell us a little bit about your portfolio and your real estate endeavors.
So thank you. I still summarize myself as a beginner investor, even though I've been in the game for about 5 years. Starting with the purchase of my own personal home, let's just be very fundamental. But then during sort of like the COVID pandemic, there was a family member that was distressed. And we had an opportunity to support that family member by purchasing the home that they lived in and renovating it and rehabbing it. So that was my first experience into actually investing into a property that wasn't my own living structure. And out of that, we got a FHA loan, 3K to fix it up. So if you know any of those programs, they are very intensive. So once you kind of go through the whims of it, you kind of really educated about the mortgage process and the purchasing process. So with that, we successfully rehabbed the property and then we took it on, snowballed it, and purchased another 2-family. So currently, there's about 3 properties in my portfolio. And yeah, hopefully we're looking to expand that.
Love it. Love it. So much that we can dig in here. So before we even go down how you did this, let's start at the beginning. When you mentioned that you had a family member that had a property that you ended up purchasing from them, did you already know that you wanted to go into real estate investing? Was this something that you were interested in, or did it just kind of happen by happenstance?
That's a good question. So as an educator at the time, I was in education, Department of Education. Shout out to all my teachers out there. I definitely knew that there was something necessary outside of the 9 to 5. And so I was looking for that. And when this opportunity presented itself, I knew that real estate was, after purchasing my first home, I realized I understood some of what demographically the importance of owning real estate was for Black and Brown communities. So when this opportunity kind of raised itself, it kind of lent itself to the community supporting. So not just my own self was the investor, I partnered with another family member and we were able to support the purchase of the home. And so out of this lesson, I got, not only do we support our own and we use collective economics to do so, I think it's very important that we look at the resources that are right in our backyard. And many times our families, our colleagues have opportunities for us. If we can structure it well, we can be not only supportive, but help build our own financial legacy.
Absolutely. And you hit something on the head there that I want to circle back to, because especially if it's a family member or a close friend and they may be in a situation, it can be uncomfortable to say, hey, I am thinking about, I need to sell my house. And so oftentimes we kind of just do this outside. So what was that process like for you, and knowing that this was happening and then also wanting to be a resource?
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't easy, especially with our families and money and us not really having the understanding and education on how to work together. So in my case, it was important that I bring in other experts. So we have realtors that help explain the process all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
Sign contracts as partners to support the purchase of the home. And then I think it's very important to educate. So the person who was distressed was someone in my family that was upper in age. And what we had to do was articulate how this purchase would be beneficial to this person moving forward. And many times our communities don't see the benefits of financial decisions
Yeah.
in the short term. We kind of really look at immediate gratification. And so in this case, we had to paint the picture that, after 5 years, you'll be completely out of debt and have all of these different options. And that was a conducive conversation that resulted in us being able to purchase the home, renovate it, keep the family member in it for a portion of time so that they can financially get back in order. And and now they are on moving on to their next steps and the things that they want to do in retirement. So I think this is a great example on how to utilize real estate as a mechanism for social change, but also generational wealth. As we continue to kind of hear that word and phrase coined, it was really a great example of how to work as a team.
That's so good. The importance of having those conversations, especially when we do talk about family members in different age range and stages of life. And so it is so critical for us to be able to be willing to talk about that and say what our situation is and what we need and how we can support one another. Because so often we hear stories about houses going on the market, they've been in families generations and then they're sold, and so then now we don't have that property. So that is fantastic. Now, you mentioned that you all did the FHA 203K loan. So, for those that aren't familiar, can you tell them a little bit more about what that is and how that was for you?
That's awesome. And because we didn't know what that was either. And what it is a financial product that allows you to utilize to purchase a home and get a significant portion of the real estate the renovation cost built into the loan. So we purchased the home for I'm going to say rough estimates because I don't know right off the top, but I think we purchased the home for around 250,000. We then took a 203K loan, which would have mounted in another, I think it was like 80 to do a full renovation. And what that allows it to do is put the 80%, 80,000 on top of the mortgage. And now, not only are you able to purchase the home, you're able to have a renovation budget to really renovate the home and actually bring up the purchase value. And so with that, we were able to not just, significantly upgrade the home, but increase its value.
Absolutely. And the FHA 203K, y'all, for those that aren't familiar, y'all go ahead and put FHA 203K. Y'all know we love to get homework around here. So you to research and study what you're going into. It's a fantastic opportunity, especially in the market that we're in right now, because there can be a lot of competition, but this allows you to purchase a home that needs some renovations. You get the renovation budget, like Rashaun just mentioned, baked into your mortgage, and you have support along the way, because for many of us, we talk about putting on a renovation, we have no idea what we're doing, what this process is like. And so this is a federal program that will help walk you through that. So now, to clarify, had you ever done any type of renovation, anything like that in a home before you use this program?
So to be honest, I did do some minor stuff to my personal home,
Okay.
but nothing to the scale. And I'm glad you pointed out nothing to the scale of this full gut renovation. And with that, the 203K has you mandated with federal, I think it's state appointed inspectors. So not
Mm-hmm.
only are you sort of like given this money, but you're also given almost like a blueprint on how to do a rehab. And that was really helpful to me because that helped us on our second project, which we were able to rehab as well.
Absolutely. We leverage these programs to give us the teaching and experience so then we can just go ahead and repeat the play. Once you learn how to do it, you know how to do it and you can do it over and again. And so this is a great way for those who are interested in like fix and flips or just wanting to see what that rehab process is like because you are going to get the steps. And so I've also worked with people who've done it where you can only use certified, insured contractors. They're very particular about who does the work. So you make sure that it is quality work that is being done. And that way you can move through the process fairly quickly, but also without any major hiccups.
Absolutely, and I think that's a great point to add because in many cases you do home improvement, you're not looking for the, licensed contractor, you're looking for the
Yeah.
cheapest, and, in this case, it's not about that, right? It's about getting the licensed person that can do it in a timely fashion, and also it teaches you something about paying in tranches or stages, so that's
Hmm.
something that you should, as a consistent habit as you do your own renovations, never paying a contractor all 100% upfront, being able to have a pay structure conducive of the work being completed. So yes, that was a great training mechanism for us and how we were kind of able to move forward.
Amazing. And for those that are listening, because this is an FHA loan, this is an owner occupied loan. And so, also because it's an FHA program, you still only have to put 3.5% down. So, you can get in a property with 3.5% down, plus they're going to give you the renovation budget. So, I know we love the move in ready, just turnkey houses, especially though when you're trying to build wealth. And this is a long term strategy that you are using to invest your money, and FHA 203K is a great way to get an older house that may need some work and be able to renovate it and add that to your portfolio. So that is super cool. Now tell me, how long did it take y'all to renovate the house, and what
Mhm.
was that process like for you, since you mentioned it was a full gut. So that's a lot of work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to be honest, it was really a smoother process being that we had some oversight. My partner and I think it was about an 8-month rehab and it's total no, it was shorter than that, maybe 6 months for rehab. And out of it, we were able to build a livable unit in the basement and then be able to separate and have a rentable unit up top so that we were able to keep the family member in the home for the time that they needed while being able to generate some rental income.
Oh, wow. That's lit. So y'all were able to make it into a multifamily essentially because you now had two separate units and were able to rent one out while one was still living there.
Correct.
Oh, that come on now. Y'all was working. Okay.
Thank you.
Now, you
Thank you.
mentioned you had a partner with this. And so another thing that we talk about is that we don't have to go at this alone. And that a lot of times we get overwhelmed with wanting into real estate because we're trying to figure out all the pieces. How was it having a partner to go in on this property with you? Did y'all have conversations? You mentioned, I think,
Mhm.
earlier about some contracts. Talk to us about that.
So our community needs to understand that collaboration is better than competition. And for me, it was really helpful to have a family member. So this my partner is my family member, but we just had a number of conversations about the goal, and the goal was to maximize the use of this real estate property, by also being able to support this family member in the time. And so once we had a clear definition on what our goals were, I think it was just backwards planning from there. And us two being two entrepreneurs, we are able to understand some of the dynamics that go along with. So I will say it's been really helpful. But I will say be careful about your partners because this real estate game and how get encroached with business it has its ups and downs, and you wanna have somebody that really understands that this is a business and that there will be some ups, but there will be some downs, and having the ability to communicate through those things is highly important. So I'm really ecstatic for my partner, Brista, out of Victory Lab Realty. He's been really supportive, although we've had significant number of challenges, I know that we are better as a result of them.
Amazing. It's listen, we have to learn from the lessons. That's how we keep going. And so no losses, just lessons around here. So that's awesome. Okay. So 6 months to renovate this property, and then you took a break, or when did the next one come about?
Yeah, that was an opportunity, and, honestly, it was a grab. So we're investors in, Queens, New York, just to be specific, and, that one came up because we were looking for another opportunity, and we were looking to kind of replicate the blueprint that we met with the 203K loan. So we bought a two-family home, which we renovated in similar fashion. It had two livable units, and what we did was convert the basement to another livable unit. So it was like three, similar to the one family we had. That one is a little bit more challenging because it wasn't 203K. It was a lot of our own private money, collaboration with another investor. There was some significant challenges with that property. Still in a portfolio. And, I think what you have to do as a real estate investor, and me learning from that 1 to 2 jump, is that do your homework, right? Do your homework on research the market, research sort of like the rental trends and what is going on, so that you know your expansion not just makes sense, but is you can handle it with your bandwidth. That's one thing I will kind of give out of my own personal experience.
Tell us more about that. How are you able to determine? It sounds like you realize we're almost at bandwidth. So, what was that process like for you?
So I realized, and I was still working at the time. Right now, I'm a full time entrepreneur, but at the time, I was still working. And you have to realize, so as these new investors, I want you to understand that when you open up a business, you're opening up a job, right? Or if you open up a property, you open it up a job. And with that, it takes time, it takes sacrifice, it takes funds. So that has to be established, and I think that was something that I did not realize, going into the second property because the first property was so seamless that we needed to build out more of a team and have more of structured support and identification of roles, and that would have been more helpful in the management of that property. So I will say to all of my aspiring investors, get your first property, sit on it for the reason why I say sit on it for 3 years is if you haven't build up the stamina of acquiring properties, there's probably going to be some finances or expenses that come in that first property within the first year, year and a half that is unexpected. So at least weather that storm. And if you get through that, when you start looking at expansion, do the research around the area and see if it's viable for expansion first. Because many times we'll find an opportunity and think that that area is the space to invest in when maybe it's the next town over or two towns over because the expansion from the area that you initially invested in has kind of taken its whiff. Sorry, I started going on a tangent.
No, this is so good. This is so good because there's so many aspects for folks to research and it can be overwhelming. And so you're putting up a really great point because one, people don't realize that you have the capital to get the house when you first start, but then you have to maintain the house. Anything that is obtained has to be maintained. And so making sure that we have a threshold that we feel comfortable with in the event something happens, because we can't always guess when there's going to be an issue with the house, but we have to make sure that we have the reserves to take care of it. So that's the one, especially when we're starting out and this is new for us. But then adding on, now you're getting a whole new property, which is a significant, again, lump sum of
Hmm,
getting
hmm.
that house. And so making sure you still have to maintain this first property
That's
while your
correct.
attention is now shifting to acquiring the second one. So that's huge. Now, you mentioned, I think before you mentioned that when you all use some of the funds from the first property to get the second property, is that right?
Yes, I think it was a cash out refinance.
Okay. Can you talk us through what that is and how that worked?
So refinancing happens when you take the original loan and go to a bank and ask them to reassess the value based on the number of improvements that you made. And in the case of the first property we own, we had significantly increased the value. So because of that, we were able to borrow against the original amount, significant enough to investment into a second property.
Absolutely. And I want y'all to hear that because, mind you, remember what Rashaun said earlier. So you have this FHA 203K loan, which means you're getting this house with 3.5% down, plus you're getting money to then add to the house to make it better, to renovate. So if you, the house, I think you said you mentioned the house you paid $250,000 for,
Right.
and then you're putting $80,000 worth of work. Well, that 80,000 isn't a tit for tat. So even though you may have 80,000 worth of work, it may increase the value by 120,000 based off of what the area is doing, what the market is doing, which then gives you equity in your home because it's now increased in value more than what you paid for it. And you can pull that money out to then rinse and repeat and use this process right over again. Now, You mentioned, so you bought this house in the first one in 2020. What year did you get the second one?
I believe so. No, it was a little bit earlier than 2020. I know the pandemic has happened, but I think the acquisition has started already. So I wouldn't say
Okay.
the first one was like 2019. I would say the
Okay.
second was 2021 then.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So now, as you're looking at properties, and we know interest rates at that time were completely, completely different to what we are looking at now. What are your thoughts on, as your people are thinking about purchasing properties and looking at interest rates and refinancing? How do you think about that as you're thinking about your continuing investing? Hey y'all, Tiffany here. Are you looking to purchase or sell real estate? As you know, I'm your aid to assets, and I want to help you with all of your real estate endeavors. Whether you're local here like me in the Fayetteville, North Carolina area, I can then help you purchase or sell your next property. If you're looking to purchase or sell outside of North Carolina, let me know too. I can still help you. I have a team of agents all over the country that I can connect you with to partner on your next deal. Let's get to the closing table, y'all. We buy our way to wealth, whether that's buying right or selling better. Can't wait to hear from you. Click on the link in the bio if you want more information on how to personally work with me or an agent on my team. Talk to you soon.
That's great. That's a great question. So I think for a floor and a basic understanding of real estate is you will lose money. It just kind of you have to figure out when, how, and how much, right? So the reason why I go back into that is because many people can hear the first portion of how we started and be like, "Oh wow, that's easy. Let me get started." The problem is that that's a great story until something goes wrong. And what I mean by something goes wrong, mechanical. So we had a flood in one of our property. We have tenants. Sometimes tenants in New York don't necessarily pay on time, or at all. I want you to understand that although we're talking about these things kind of being able to be easily leveraged, you have to understand that this is a business and something will go wrong. Now, that's not to deter you, but it's to let you know that in this business, something can go wrong and it will, right? Now, going back into the interest rates really don't matter. And what I'm saying, it sounds kind of confusing because everybody's listening to the news and they're like, crap, crap, crap. It really doesn't matter in the sense of if you need a home to live, you need a home, right? I mean, it's nice to be able to borrow the money at 2.75%, but if the interest rates are 5 and 6, you just have to make a different type of decision on the type of home you purchase, right? That's really it. You still need a place to live, right? Now, on the investment front, there's still people making money in a high interest environment. You do have to be more cautious about the purchase though. So what does that mean? I have to buy right. And many realtors will say that. Buying right means you've understood what the market value is, you understand how where it's going, you know, um, certain details about the usefulness or the utilization of the home that you're building. Are you adding value to it? Like those are all computations and calculations you'll make to understand if you're buying right. And if you buy right, you can buy in any interest environment. So is this environment for the new investor that's just throwing away COVID money? No, because you will get punched in the face, right? But if you do your homework and you're listening to this podcast, Aid to Ask, you're doing your research, you're talking to realtors and investors that are actively in the business, you're getting a better sense at the best opportunity, and then I think you're still more prepared to take advantage.
That is so, so good. Y'all in the comments, put buy right, because there is deals no matter what the market is doing, no matter where we are economically. And one of the reasons why I even wanted to start investing in real estate is because when I looked at the different things that I can invest in and businesses that I can run, people are always going to need somewhere to stay. You said it perfectly. You're always going to need somewhere to live. And so, regardless of what the interest rates are doing or what the market is doing, you're always going to need a home. And so people are always going to be buying homes no matter what else is going on in the world. It is just a matter of doing your due diligence, making sure you understand your numbers, making sure you understand your margin. That's why I'm really cautious about people who don't personalize this. Everyone's situation is going to be different. And so you need to know your risk tolerance, how much money you have, how much money you're comfortable leveraging. That is so important as you're thinking about your strategy because it's going to look different for every single person.
That's right. And I think it's important to really ask yourself a lot of questions. The first thing is, am I staying here 5 years? Right? Because
Mm,
once you ask yourself that question, and depending upon the answer, you can kind of get a better sense on what type of investment you're making. Is this more short
hmm.
term or is this long term? And then from there, you can have a better sense on, you know, life preferences. Do I have children? Is this a school district? How long is the commute from work? All of those things play a viable point. And when you're in high interest environment like this, you just have to ask more of those questions.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Okay. So now, do you self manage your properties or do you have a property manager?
Yeah, so I will be having a property manager. That is definitely a lesson that I in New York specifically, it's probably not best to property manage and I'm gonna say it really bluntly, I don't think New York is a good space for small investors like myself.
Okay.
Meaning the laws aren't, and this is the research that I should have done, and I'll share this with the community. The laws aren't really conducive to a landlord of my or a renter of my size. Meaning the laws more favor the tenants and they have more rights. And that's something that I
Hmm.
did not know prior to sort of becoming a landlord in New York City.
Absolutely. Yeah, New York is rough. I have some other friends who have properties in New York and they talk about the eviction process and how long that can take and just so many different things. And so that is a really good point for people to know to research the laws because once again, we are starting businesses, y'all. We are opening businesses when we buy property and then rent them out to other people. We're starting a real estate management company. And
Yep.
so you need to know the laws for the business that you are starting. And so there are states that are much more tenant friendly. I'm here in the South, so we're a little bit more landlord friendly compared to being up north. And so that is important when you think about how you operate, what you can and cannot do, how long processes may take. That is a huge point about how much reserves do I need to have in case you do have a tenant that isn't going to pay and you know you have to go through this lengthy process versus like for me here in North Carolina, we can get pretty people out pretty quickly.
I'm coming down. I've been doing my research. North Carolina, Ohio,
Yep.
Detroit, those are areas that I will definitely be knocking on your door as soon as I can get these properties liquidated. And it's not
Let's
a,
go.
you know what I mean? It's not a negative, it's just a learning. That's part of my learning. So one thing is from one level to a next level of investment, you're continually learning. So always continue to process information and never take it personal. Some of the business sort of losses. You just got to keep your head in the game.
Yeah, that's good. And so let's talk about that a little bit because I think one of the things that keeps people on the sidelines from jumping into something like this is we all start at the beginning. We all start at the beginning. We're all new. And so there inevitably are going to be some losses. Some losses, of course, are going to be smaller than others. However, it's still going to be one. And it's on us to make it a lesson. How did you develop the mindset to be able to take them L's and turn them into lessons and keep going?
So I think it comes back to my history. I played athletic. I was a
Hmm.
professional basketball player. So you sort of understand that you're not going to make every shot, right? But it's more about the form. It's more about being consistent. So I think that's some of what I leaned on.
Hmm.
I also just as an entrepreneur, you have to build a fortitude to understand that your next challenge is probably your next lesson and it's going to exponentially grow you. So that's something else that I've just personally been developing and growing into. And also I just got to say like the partnerships and some of the people that I've surrounded myself with since becoming an investor and understanding some of the stories and tribulations that they have has made the experience more realistic and more digestible for myself. And again, you have to have a thick in order to be in this business. And I know a lot of people who are on the fence. Some of my people actually had a conversation with a guy. He's like, I can never do that. But in return, I get a check from uh, support responses. I get a check for tax exemptions. Those are pluses that don't get equated, right? And so if you're
Hmm.
doing all these if you're renting, normally your money is set. Your monthly rent is set. Well, when you're owner, there's sometimes that receiving interest payments or you're receiving checks that are above and beyond. So again, it's a roller coaster. There are losses, but then there's times where you're exponentially growing, and you just have to hold on and wait for those points.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us now, what's the most expensive mistake that you've made so far since you've been a real estate investor?
Uh, so it hasn't really been mechanical stuff. Like I haven't done ground up construction, and
Oh,
I just think the most expensive mistake that I've had is, excuse me, we've had mechanical things come up like boiler, $500, plumber, main breaks, that's $1,000. But for me, the tenant management situation has been the biggest expense because in New York, they require you to continue to house them, even though you're going through a process. So
mm-hmm.
it's like the meter keeps running in some respect. But
Mm-hmm.
again, with due diligence and learning from that experience, you just become more savvy and know what to do for the next experience.
So now, did you find your own tenants on your own? Is that what you're saying? And so just the process that you use in choosing who you were going to let to move in?
So I didn't choose I did work with a mortgage. I'm not a mortgage broker, a real estate realtor who
Mm-hmm.
vetted the people. What I would do, well, first of all, I wouldn't rent in New York anymore. So that's just out of
Period.
period, right? Like I'm done. But secondly, I would have done more homework. So, 2 people that I know rent in South Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
are landlords in South Carolina. Not only do they ask for the references, they run their credit, right? That's something
Mm-hmm.
in New York, I think it's just now becoming a little bit more expansive. They ask for letters.
Really?
Yeah, we haven't had a history of going that far. We just clear you and see if you're in tenant landlord courts or anything open, and then for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, you're cleared to go. But as I've seen how extensive it is in other areas in Atlanta and South Carolina, they pretty much ask, for your mother's social security number. And I'm
Yes.
like, yeah. And I'm like, maybe I don't go that far, but that search needs to be more expansive. And also I need to hire property managers. I'm not a property manager. I did an okay
Mm.
job.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my strong. So in understanding business and understanding real estate, you got to understand what role that you play and understanding what your strong suit is. Mine is finding deals, being able to put together deals and finance deals. That's my role.
Love it. Yeah, down here we're gonna get all your business before we let you move in. It's imperative. So that is true. I didn't realize that that wasn't common in other places. Especially, I thought it would be somewhere like New York. It would be. So that's mind blowing. But yeah, so you talked about knowing your strengths and being willing to like invest in people like a property manager, so that way that alleviates that responsibility so you can focus on what you do well. What other traits do you feel have helped you to be successful as a real estate investor?
Hmm, that's a good question. So we got to paraphrase what's successful, right? I'm
That's
floating.
true.
Nah,
That's
I'm
true.
surviving. No, I will say, the thing is, I'm gonna be a multimillionaire, right? So that's the goal,
Period.
right?
Okay.
So, and we can laugh and we can joke about the ups and downs of it, but that's going to be the result, the end data. Now,
Mhm.
at this point, I'm still kind of going through the tribulation. What has helped me be positive, even though I've faced some challenges, is that knowing what the end is going to be, the result. I'm going to be a multimillionaire. I'm going to have multiple properties a part of this portfolio, right? This is the beginning.
Mhm.
Secondly, I think some of my communication skills of being from athletics have been advantageous to me, right? And being able to articulate to my partners and also speaking to my various team, whether it be legal, mortgage brokers, CPAs, all of which are part of our team. I I help bridge that gap and communicate well, and that's been positive in this process. And secondly, I just gotta say, I gotta go back to thick skin, because what happens is you have to have the vision to see when it's not working well, right? So that when it does, and everybody's starting to pat you on the back, you still have the fortitude to understand that this only happened because you went through the tough time.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Okay. So now tell me about, because you've talked a lot about the way that you've been able to learn and the people that you've been able to surround yourself with. How did you find other people that were doing the same thing that you were trying to get into when you were first getting started?
That's great. Cool. I once I got the first property and I knew that there was a lot more that I didn't, I started to just inundate myself with networking events, real estate beat book, The $1 Million Real Estate Investor was amazing, and just really started to, tap into the YouTube University and really do my own due diligence about what type of real estate investor I wanted to become. I think that's
Mhm.
important so that you understand where your niche is, whether it's corporate real estate, whether it's commercial, whether it's residential, whether it's mixed use. You have to understand where's your strategy and where you want to kind of fit in. Once you kind of understand that, have an identity about the investor that you want to be, it gives you a lot of leverage and understand how you want to develop. I would also surround yourself with a mentor or someone that has a step or two ahead of what you're trying to do. This way, you have somebody that you can connect with questions and challenges that you may see in your own journey.
Got it. Got it. That's super helpful. Now, you mentioned when you first started, you were still working full time at the DOE, but since then you've transitioned into full time ownership. Excuse me, full time entrepreneurship. What was that transition like? Because for many of our listeners, that is the goal. They want to be able to quit their job and focus solely on entrepreneurship. Tell us about that process for you.
Well, being a real estate investor really and really gave me a blueprint to start from. So I will say that that was sort of the learning curve. My company, one of the logos we have, impact over
I
income.
need a shirt.
Yes,
This is
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I got you. I got
lit.
you, Queen. I think what it did was give me the fortitude of confidence to kind of step into the role that I felt was really beneficial. Really spoke to who I was spiritually. So after leaving the Department of Education after 15 years, I opened Prolific Consulting, which is a business that works with schools, community board organizations, religious institutions, support mentor around that community. Some of the issues that we continually see across the nation with Black and Brown communities is that our young men specifically don't have visions of success or opportunities to be successful. And so, through my experience and also through a lot of my connections, I've started to work with school districts to build mentoring programs and train teachers to become better mentors and and facilitating our young men to be successful. I also penned my first book, Unlocking the Greatness Within, 10 steps to helping young people find their personal greatness. And I think it's important, just like we're talking about investing, that we look at our communities as viable investments and not just the real estate, but the people. And who do we have to invest in mostly for our communities to build is that we have to understand and invest in our youth. And that's really what my company is focused on.
Wow, that is amazing. So y'all, that book will also be linked in the description. So be sure to get that. And so it's so cool because one of the things that I love about real estate, and I think that I love to share with people, is that I get to invest in a community. Right? When you go in a community and you see a bunch of abandoned buildings, houses, properties that just aren't taken care of, then there are people that still have to be there, that have to go by, drive by there, walk by there every day. And so as an investor, I get to help to bring back life into an area. And so then the people there are impacted. And so I love the work that you are doing. It is absolutely so necessary. So thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you, and thank you for having this platform. If I once one of the mental challenge well, first, before we start talking about the investing and becoming your own boss, we have to talk about the mental mindset that has to, change. And had I
Mm-hmm.
had a platform like this when I was on my journey, I think it would have been helpful and support. So I'm glad that you created because I know that there's a community of people who are trying to find what that blueprint is. The pandemic unraveled a lot for as a
Mm-hmm.
community. And one of the things is that most of the answers are inside. And I'm so glad that you, Queen, are stepping up to sort of be a voice for providing those answers to people so that now we not only survive in this country, we actually thrive. Because I think Black and Brown people have survived for too long. We're at the aspect where we're working, we're yearning to thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. Times are definitely changing, and we are going from that, moving from that surviving to thriving life is so important and critical because we, like you mentioned, we have everything that we need right inside of us. It's just a matter of asking ourselves some questions and really trusting the greatness that we have inside of us and believing that we can make it it can make it a reality.
Absolutely.
So speaking of platforms, you have your own platform that you created. Tell us a little bit more about your podcast.
Yes, yes, yes. And thank you because I'm still kind of getting like the cobwebs out. So, Respectfully Candid is a podcast that myself and my illustrious partner Jessica Sinclair has started. And what we want to aim to do is similar to what you're doing for the real estate community. We want to have candid, respectful conversations with community folks, politicians, people who are viable in our community to have discussions on financial literacy and what parts of their story can help or express so it supports or share challenges with somebody in the community. I think adult mentorship is something that we need to coin a little bit, and learning through
Mm.
our own people's experiences is the best way to do so. So on our platform, Respectfully Candid, we have diverse conversations, sometimes about financial literacy, other times about who's taking who to the Cheesecake Factory, but but all within the context of inspiring and supportive our community to be better and leaving a legacy of continually open mindset learning that we wish everyone has.
I love that. It's the cool thing about the podcast space that we're in is we get to have a lot more of the conversations we're already having behind closed doors in public. And so that was the reason why this platform created. I get to meet dope investors like yourself, and I wanted other people to meet you, to see that you're real and hear about what it is that you're doing. And so I love Respectfully Candid because respectfully, we can still have these conversations and
That's
really
right.
share our thoughts and our opinions about different situations that are going on. So that's super cool. I'm excited to tap in.
And I love to have you on as a guest because you bring a wealth of a wealth of experience. We definitely love to tap in and hear about your story. And I definitely think that that's something that our community wants to hear.
Yeah, for sure. We can definitely do that. We can definitely do that. So, before we wrap up, one of the things that we like to do here is we are vision setters, vision casters. And so, when you think about you and your business, what is going to be true when we look back at this interview a year, 3 years from now? What should we be expecting from you?
So real estate will still be a passive business that will always be a part of my portfolio. I do think that I will be actively investing in outside markets. Um, my main business, Prolific Consulting, will impact 1 million lives and touch 1 million young people. And through its partnership, I see communities not only beginning to um, build out their own blueprints for success, but now that they a certain motto or a certain mission statement around why purposely it's important for Black and Brown communities to thrive in our nation. So, along with continuing to build out more properties, I want to touch 1 billion people, affect 1 million communities.
Wow, I love it. You are definitely on your way, friend. Thank you again for just coming on here, sharing your knowledge. Love the work that you're doing in the community. It's so necessary. And so just to be able to see more Black men pouring into tomorrow's youth, it is phenomenal. So thank you.
Thank you for having. I also have a nonprofit group. You can follow that at Team Crate Hoops on Instagram, and I think it's about vertical integration. You know, I invest in real estate, but I invest in youth, and the connection to that is I want to leave communities better than I found it. So whether it's
Hmm.
physical buildings or the structure of our young kings and queens, I'll have a fingerprint on how both those areas become successful.
Love it. So, y'all, that'll be in the description as well. Make sure you tap in with Rashaun, follow, listen to the podcast, get the book. It's fantastic. Thank you again for coming. And y'all, this has been another phenomenal episode of the Aid to Assets podcast where we are helping you get to the closing table. Take care, y'all.
Bye bye. Thanks, Tiffany.
Thank you for tuning in to another insightful episode of Aid to Assets. Remember, your journey from 9-to-5er to successful real estate investor is within reach. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep investing in your future. If you'd like to know more, connect with me on Instagram at Aid to Assets. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Until next time, happy investing.